So what we want to talk about is a tool that used to be called, by the way, for some of you who've been around a while, Atrium Discovery and Dependency Mapping, or short ADDM is the way it was referred to. When they got to version 11, they just decided to change the name, but I mean, what it's trying to accomplish out there for you remains the same. And so as you can see from this first slide I have here, it's basically going to discover what's in your data center, your servers, your mainframes, your networks, your software, your storage. And, you know, it's got a lot of automation in the way that it does that, because as part of the technology, we are automatically recognize up to 1,000 different types of relationships and 100 middleware software out there. And as Dick just mentioned, even some of the DevOps technologies it may be running. So when we do the discovery run and we see those types of things, it's not like we've got to go, oh, what is that performing, or who is the manufacturer of that particular product? And the next bullet, of course, is really where we have patterns against the third-party applications that are out there. So we recognize over 40,000 software versions of, again, your third-party type software, 3,000 different network devices, and up to 20 different storage brands of your network-attached storage, as well as your more directly attached LUNs and all that are out there. So being able to do that level of discovery and then that level of recognition of what's running on those devices, with the improvements they've now made in version 11 with this simple application mapping, it's where we can get to doing that very, very quickly. For those of you who've been around for some time, back in, you know, version 5, version 6 of this thing, you know, it'd take about a week per application to really get in there and do the thing. And then they started making improvements in, I think it was version 9, probably 10, where they had something called collaborative application mapping, and it reduced the number of scripts you had to do and things and got it to be even better. But with version 11, they've actually made a quantum leap to where, as you know, Dick talked about, if you can hold the mouse and start to draw a circle with that, you can start to do some application maps pretty darn quickly. And I'll show you how to do that as we go on through the presentation there. So again, just a different way of looking at that. But one of the things, since this is integrated with our Atrium CMDB, the Remedy CMDB, we're then able to find those services in the CMDB and then take what's been discovered through BMC Discovery and, of course, then link those to those services, so that when you're in ITSM and you want to know what is the dependency infrastructure for my Exchange server, for my SAP environment, for, you know, whatever the enterprise app is, you're able to not only understand it from a machine, middleware to middleware, database to machine standpoint, but now you've got it mapped to that higher level of services within your system there. So this is typically the people who are going to ultimately consume the results of that, right? I mean, in service management, you certainly want to be able to link your CIs, which is what this thing does. It discovers the configuration items, be it hardware, software, network equipment. You want to be able to link those over to the tickets and build that service history and understand the dependency relationships there. Certainly for the people in operations, they've kind of got to know, you know, what do we have? How is it configured? How are we using that? And the interesting one is in the enterprise architecture. You know, it's amazing that you'll see a lot of people who've got a nice Visio, maybe even an exploded Visio on the wall of what the infrastructure supposedly looks like. And then when you get a tool like this that goes in and does the deep dive that it does, you find some interesting anomalies, that things maybe weren't quite the way they thought. And that's because obviously people go out, they draw these maps, they do these Visios out there, but it's not constantly somebody watching to see if something's changed, whereas with a discovery tool like this, you're doing that, and thus you can get a much more up-to-date picture of what's my environment like as of the last scan that we did. And of course, your application management people, they want to know, you know, my applications require what? What would be the impact if we were to lose one of our application servers or one of our databases? We need to be able to map that out and understand that. And then, of course, in today's world with all the cyber issues going on, the security operations people really need to know what's out there, how it's configured, and so really BMC Discovery has components and things that it discovers that will aid all of these people. End-of-life software that's out there that certainly would risk come into a security-related type of issue there. So, basically, how do we do it? Well, you have to go out and do your discovery first, of course, right? And as I think most of you know, we deliver this as a pre-built appliance. You just load it onto whatever your virtual technology is, and we're ready to go. And, if you're a small shop, that might be a single appliance that you put out there, or more typically, you have multiple appliances to get around issues around different domains or, the secure network versus the unsecure network. And there are technologies out there to allow us to use consolidation appliances. There's the ability out there to cluster up to 7 appliances together and manage it as one different appliance. So it's a well thought out infrastructure or design architecture, if you would. And of course, with everybody being so Windows centric today, you basically set up a Windows proxy server, and then you basically do the discovery, right? What's the IP range that you want to scan? You have to then, again, you may have multiple DMZs, and that's fine. You can put a appliance to each of them. You then have to, of course, give it the IP range. You've got to supply the credentials, which are kept, of course, in an encrypted vault. And then we bring back the information, and that's where BMC Discovery does such a great job of then slicing and dicing that into over 100 different reports and dashboards right out of the box, because it knows what data it's going to be discovering. So they've gone on and built all of that type of thing there. So the Start Anywhere application mapping, again, unlike some of the previous versions of this, there's a new schematic or UI, if you would, of how we present the information we discover back, and what the dependencies are, what are applications, what are the communications link, and to do that. And then as you want to isolate a given application out, it's merely a matter of just, again, drawing the circle around it, putting some credentials on it, and you're pretty well good to go there. So right out of the box, this just kind of gives you a snapshot, right? It's going to discover all of your hosts that are out there. It's going to discover all of your network devices. It's going to discover your storage devices if you elect to do that. It's going to discover things like load balancers and, network-related printers and so forth. Obviously, all of your software instances that you've got out there, the database details that are out there, the patches that are on the different application servers, the file systems. So all of that is kind of built into to the tool right up front to be able to do that. And then, as I mentioned, because they already know what Discovery is going to bring in, they built the dashboards and reporting infrastructure out there, so that within 3 clicks, you should be able to get to any piece of information about any CI that's out there and that has been discovered. And that's kind of what we're going to kind of go into and talk a little bit about that. So, again, it's an agentless-based discovery. It's very lightweight, but it's also very scalable, as I mentioned earlier, doing things like clustering and consolidation servers and that type of thing. And it's obviously very, very secure. I mean, we have very large customers. We have very large commercial structures like the top 1 and 2 banks in the world. We've got DoD accounts. So, we can have a conversation for those who need to do it about how we keep it secure and what are the credentials and the encryptions and those types of things. We do things like if you need to harden one of these appliances because you need to apply a disastig, for example, those scripts are already there to do the majority of that work for you. So BMC understands the marketplace where this tool is going into. Again, a lot of times it's a remedy shop anyway, and so they've done the work to make sure that we do the compliances and all that are out there. 2 very nice add-ons that most people are taking advantage of is that the manufacturers will provide us, you, on a monthly basis, information about software end of life, from a end of life, end of support, end of extended report. And obviously, if you're running software that's in one of those 3 states, that is somewhat of a security issue in and of itself, and being able to quickly put your hands on that information lets you build a plan over time to start remediating those issues without it being a fire drill due to some audit or something of that nature. And then we also can get from the manufacturers the hardware consumptions around power and BTUs and cooling requirements and all of that. So again, if you wanted to look into, hey, give me a list of my highest power consuming servers that are out there, maybe that's a great candidate for doing some type of data consolidation or something. Just one caveat there, just to pick up on something that Dick talked about. In what we're doing in BMC Discovery, we're just telling you what the manufacturer is telling us the heat, power, cooling statistics of that particular server is about. It's not doing a real-time feed. That is the DCI of the Enlight product that allows you to basically build out your data center floor map, understand what servers you have, where they sit within the rack, and the actual cabling all the way back out so that we know the power draw. We've got real-time monitoring strips and all of that. So it's a great sister product, if you would, to what Discovery does, because Enlight doesn't do the discovery. It relies on tools like this to do it, and then they basically map it out and show it to you on your floor and let you have different data center floors and look at how you can better use it. And then last but not least, as I mentioned, we do support the majority of the big storage vendors now. And so I'm logged in to BMC Discovery. This is version 11, by the way, which is the latest release from BMC. And my typical starting pace, of course, is my baseline dashboard. And, right out of the box, as I mentioned, there are a whole bunch of dashboards that have already been pre-configured out there around, discovery, the hardware, the virtualizations, the storage, the software, the OSs. All of those are built for you. And, of course, each one of these dashboards is made possible because a set of predefined reports have been created that then bubble those up into the dashboard. So as I'm looking at my baseline dashboard, here are the things that we showed you on one of those slides, my network devices, my printers, my host, my different locations, my storage packages, my software instances. I also have over here where we can do automatic grouping because, again, as I think most of you know, we watch the communications between the different servers and the underlying infrastructure and the applications and what IPs they're using to do that. And we can certainly see that, hey, there tends to be a lot of activity around these sets of machines. We can do that, but we also can go in and manually map some things together if we need to be able to do that. As we scroll on down here, you're kind of seeing, again, this is your baseline dashboard. So, what kind of software are we running out there? So, I got Oracle, Apache, EMC, Dell, Sybase, IBM. And notice as I hover over these, it shows you they are interactive. So if I were to just click on one of those, it will bring up the underlying information that was used to build the graph. Here's my OS distribution between your typical Solaris, your Red Hats, your AIX, your Windows devices, and those types of things. And again, just more information, average number of network connections, what's my makeup of physical versus virtual servers. Again, we didn't have to work to get that. It just kind of picks that up as part of the discovery scan to know that type of information there kind of automatically. So what is it actually bringing back in? So I just clicked on show me a bunch of my hosts out there, and we'll just go out here and grab one of these Windows servers and click on it. And first off, it's going to show me what all that one's connected to, and we'll just skip that for the moment. I'm more concerned at this point of just letting you know, well, what is it that we discovered, right? Well, it's a Windows server. It's built by Dell. It's communicating with 2 other hosts. There are 8 software instances that are running on this particular box. Here's the domain that it's setting there and running on as we go through that. Here is the information about the OS on this particular server, what service packs there are to, what build you're on, what patches. There are 266 patches installed. And again, these are all hyperlinks. So if I were to click on that, it would bring up the list of patches on this particular service. Here's the information about the OS. Remember, we've got the extended data pack, so we know that this thing went to end of life back in 2015. Same thing for your end of support. It looks like we do have extended support on this one, at least through 2020, but you need to start building a plan now as far as how you're going to address that. Plus, extended support comes at a big cost. You do have to have something done. It's not like they come fix it for free. There's big dollars being charged there. So again, on this Dell server running Windows that we're looking at, here's the information about how it's configured, right? How much physical and logical RAM it's got. What's the actual hardware model, number of processors, the power that it's putting out, again, based on the hardware specs provided by the manufacturer. Here's my network interfaces that I'm doing here. And in this case, you would come down, and this one doesn't have any HBOs, but it does have some local. So here's the information about, how that's kind of configured out there. So that's the type of information about a Windows servers that we bring in, and we're able then to leverage in those various reports that you've got out there. And so that's, again, just kind of one example of what you could look at there. So again, just kind of moving around some of these a little bit. One of the ones a lot of people are really interested in is around virtualization, because we're all obviously doing that today. So again, with a single click, we can get in here to see, our Windows virtualization. We're doing the various technologies, our Unix virtualizations around the various technologies. And then here are all the underlying reports around virtualization that you could bring up and run. So a lot of very, very rich information is provided for you when you go out there. But the kind of the underlying theme is, once we go out and do those discoveries, then how do you create those application maps? Again, you'll notice if you just click on any one of the underlying servers or network devices or whatever, it brings you up a map to show you what communications it has observed, but sometimes that may not be the picture you really want to see. So I'm going to use my search box up here, and I'm going to search for Remedy, because I've got Remedy in my environment. I'm going to say, go out and find all instances of Remedy. And so it says, well, there are 9 hosts running Remedy. They're, a primary application instance. I'm going to bring up my software instance around Remedy, and there were 34 of those. And so it's bringing me up a list of all of the different servers. So you'll notice here, I've got flash boards, I've got ARS, for those of you familiar with Remedy. I've got my mid-tier servers. I've got mid-tier servers on version 9, on version 8.1, and quite honestly, I know in this one I've got it on 7.5 as well. So I could get a picture of all that together, but that would be kind of an eyesore to do. So what I really want to do is look at my my production system, Prod 01 for 8.1. I want to bring up my application map view of that. And so it brings this up, and of course it's a relatively busy slide, and of course I've got controls here where I can do things. One of the things I'm going to do is kind of take a little bit of the noise away here, and say, first off, I'm going to change the layout here just to kind of give it a little more pointed view there. And I'm going to go in here and get rid of things that really aren't that critical to what I'm looking at here. So I'm going to get rid of the view of the load balancers, again, just to give us a little bit more real estate to look at here. So now as I look at that, and let me blow this up just a tad more, it looks like I've got kind of 2 clusters of information there, if you would. You go one more deep on the viewing in here. So I can see here that, here's where I've got my ARS servers, my mid-tier, my Tomcat running, all the information about Remedy. And oh, by the way, if you want to know what some of these little icons mean, that means it's got 3 hosts communicating over 3 different application instances here. And that's really what this little icon here for, is to give you a view into that. But if I look at this is my primary Remedy Prod 01 system over here, but I got a bunch of stuff over here that seems to be talking to it also. And for those of you who were listening, if you remember, BMC Discovery used to be called ADDM. So since we know ADDM is tightly integrated with Remedy, when I said just go out and show me everything Remedy, it went out and found the ADDM Discovery applications running that are feeding into Remedy. Well, if I'm the primary Remedy developer guy and I want to get a picture of just my Remedy environment, I really don't care anything about this. So this is that if you can hold a mouse button and draw a circle, you can do it. I'm going to come in here and say, you know, I want to get a different map here, and I'm really only looking to get this piece of it because that's my primary application server. You do that again because I missed the part on the bottom there. And I'm really only looking to get to this level is what I want, and I'm going to say I want to model that only. And so when I do that and say create a new application model, it's going to drop all of the information about ADDM and just come over here and now give me my version that I want over here, and I'm seeing my primary ARS servers and my mid-tiers and my Oracle database and those things. So if I want to do that, you know, I would just call this, you know, Remedy prod 1 view that I wanted to do out there. I'd save those changes. I hadn't yet published this so everybody can see it, but I saved those changes. Now, if I want to change the view of kind of what this looks like over here, for example, this is a fine view, but maybe somebody wants to know what are the vulnerabilities if some of their Remedy servers were to go down or something like that. Well, there are different ways to look at these layouts, right? So maybe I want an impact layout to understand the upstream, downstream dependencies of my various Remedy devices or, you know, again, whatever view that you want under a layout. You know, we've got a number of different ways to do it. But once I save this and I publish this, then that's a particular view. And then, of course, when I synchronize over with my Atrium CMDB as far as Remedy, this is a new map that gets loaded over there, and I would be able to view this impact of dependencies within the Atrium CMDB, within Remedy, as well as the ability, of course, to come over here and work with it within this mode as well. So that's an example of what we mean about doing that clicking, hold your mouse down, get a view of the model you want, because again, the way Discovery works is it looks at all communication. So at the highest level, almost everything is ultimately touching in some way or another a lot of other different systems, and that's a great map to have, but ultimately you're going to want to slice and dice this down to your individual application maps, i.e. in this case, my Remedy production server versus I might have a different map of my development environment, a different map of my test environment, and then I might have a holistic map that shows the Discovery and the prod system all in one. So very easy for you to go in and create these yourselves. Again, as I said, you should be able to map any application where we've automatically discovered the communication. You know, 15, 30 minutes should be the most it should take to do that. If you've got an application out there that's not well defined because you don't follow a normal naming convention, you know, you might be talking about an hour or something. But the vast majority of them, and especially if you have access to the application owner that understands how all this stuff is architected, you know, instead of days to weeks the way it used to be, it should be minutes to, you know, a couple of hours at most in this new environment. So that's why they're very pleased with how much improvements have been made in this thing. So a lot of people will say, well, you know, yeah, we've got Exchange and we've got Remedy and those things that the patterns out there, it can automatically recognize it. Well, what about our custom applications that are out there? And that's where they've also made great strides out there. So the big thing about a custom application is don't just start from scratch. At least bring back some piece of information, right? So one of the things they've done out there is they've built a whole series of templates out there to help you discover things. So, for example, if I wanted to model a software entrance, they've created all of these different templates. So let's say you don't know much about this inherited application of this newly acquired agency or newly acquired company if you're commercial, and they don't really have the people who created that app. So maybe some of those folks are gone now, and we really need to try to build that map. Well, don't start just from scratch. I mean, we'll see it communicating, so we'll have some device, but as long as you can leverage one of these templates like, well, I do know what the registry key is for the application, well, fine, bring up that particular template, give it that, and then at least we've got a starting point. We'll identify that registry key, and then anytime we see that in the future, we'll know that that's application X. And of course, we already know what servers it's running on. So certainly a little bit more complicated in an environment where it's a totally custom app, but because you've got these different types of templates out there to help you build those, you still should be talking about, a few hours to a day or so, whereas before, if you had a completely custom map, we'd say anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks on occasion. That's no longer true with version 11. So they just made some great strides in here as far as what you're doing there. The other thing that I get a lot of questions about is, well, are you actually monitoring these devices that you discover? And while BMC will do that, that's not part of what Discovery is. Discovery discovers and makes it drill downable through almost a data mart with all it greats reports. Now, I will keep track of value changes to the things that I discover. So, for example, if I want to go over here, G-U-R-A-T, if I want to go over here and say I want to look into configurations and I want to get a report of what values have changed on a particular server, so hardware changes, I could go in here and give it a particular server's name and it would bring up just that server. Maybe we got a call this morning and we know somebody made a change to this server last night, and now we're getting all these kind of incidents this morning. Wouldn't it be nice to actually go in and see what actually changed on that particular server there? So if I knew that name, I could do it. I'm just going to give it a date range here. And basically what it'll do, either for that one server, or in my case, I just did a date range, it'll say, well, the initial value was X, and based on the change made last night, now here's the new value. So maybe that means that a firmware update was done, or we added more memory, or we enabled additional CPUs, or whatever the case may be. This would be a tool to let you go in and quickly drill in and find that out, but it's not actually doing the monitoring of the servers themselves as far as, is it up, is it down, do we have any capacity issues around there. BMC has a whole line of solutions around their TrueSight solution set that does do that type of information. So we can certainly bring you solutions to talk about if that becomes part of it. But again, I just kind of anticipate questions that'll probably be coming in. That's not one of the things that you are doing there. Then, of course, this is kind of over on the administration. We are very role-based, persona-based. So based on when you log in, we control what you can see, what dashboards you can see. We're very integrated with LDAP. We're integrated with single sign-on here. As I mentioned earlier on, we've got security policies that we can set up. We can apply certain hardening like the DISA-STIGs and so forth that are out there. We're out of the box integrated again with the Remedy and Atrium CMDB, so there's really no work to do there other than obviously anytime you update the database over there, you're going to run a reconciliation job and so forth. For those of you who may be interested in, well, what are the different platforms that are supported? I mean, it's pretty much everything that's out there, right? AIX, Linux, even OpenVMS, Mac, Solaris, pretty much everything that's out there. Most of the primary flavors of Linux, of course, are out there. We do also have the ability to do things like AIX, which not everybody can do. We can actually go out and discover information about mainframes and all. I think that might be an optional add-on because so many people don't have that anymore. But if you want to know what we're discovering about a given Linux device or whatever it may be, again, you could come in here or you could go to the wiki page, bmcdiscovery.com, and it'll actually show you the commands that it's issuing on a Linux box to bring back information. So device intro, directory list and file content, host info, IP address, MAC address. So all of this stuff is pre-built. It's in there again. If you go out to the wiki on BMC's page, you can get all of this information, and it's brought in here to be able to do that. So, and same thing, of course, over on the network devices where we use to query those. So, we would be more than happy to come out and chat with you about what your mix of infrastructure looks like and what you want to what you want to discover in your environment, but with what it discovers, with the richness of the dashboards and reports that it brings out for you, for the ability to kind of do those quick maps, I think this typically would be a tool that everybody could benefit from. So, Dick, Valerie, if we want to open it up and see if we've got any questions, we'll be more than happy to look at that.
All right. Thanks a lot, Roger. Great job. Very good. There's a couple of questions that have come in, and the first one here is a question, obviously, as a Remedy Force customer, and they're saying, is this the product that will be running as Discovery and Remedy Force? And I believe the answer is no. That's the BCM product. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's correct. The announcement with the latest release of Remedy is that it does to come with the Discovery. That's really client Discovery, although it will discover a Windows server. But it's doing that and will bring that in and then has additional add-ons to it. Now, having said that, BMC Discovery, which is a relationship discovery thing, right, as opposed to just, here's how your laptop is configured, which is BCM Remedy Force. This does work with Remedy Force. We have a number of customers who wanted to get those relationship maps done and make them available. And because when you buy ADDM, even if you're not a Remedy customer, you get the Atrium CMDB at no additional charge. So the way it would work would be you would run Discovery, it would populate the Atrium CMDB, and then if you wanted to take certain things from that CMDB and push them over into Remedy Force, we've got a Pentaho script, which is what Remedy Force typically uses, to be able to take that information and push it over there. So it's not the thing that comes free with the latest version of Remedy Force, but it is usable with Remedy Force if you have that level of requirement.
Okay, and just because you mentioned BCM, the difference between BCM and BMC Discovery is really Discovery is more focused on servers and BCM is more focused on clients. Is that a simple way to look at it?
That's a fair statement. The thing I would add beyond that, though, is BMC Discovery is about relationships and dependencies, whereas just BMC Client Management, it's really just trying to say, hey, here are all the client endpoints, your desktops, your laptops, your Windows servers, and here's what's installed on it, right? It's got this much RAM, this many NIC cards, it's got this much memory in it, here are the applications that are running and where they're located, but I'm not sitting there watching communications to know that, oh, if this device went down, it would cause a hiccup over here. It's not doing any of that relationship. The other difference is that BMC Client Management, not the little free piece that comes with Remedy Force, but if you had the full suite of client management, it actually lets you manage those endpoints. So you can do patch management, actually distribute the patches out to the devices. You can roll out applications. You can do software license management. You can even push Windows OSs, like if you have an initiative coming up to roll out Windows 10 replacing Windows 7, the BCM tool has the logic and wherewithal within it to automate that process. So Discovery Data Center with relationships and dependencies. BMC Client Management is the word client would imply. It's really focused on the end user machines and singularities and how they're configured, not what they're communicating with.
Yeah, and related to that, oftentimes we get asked, well, we already have Microsoft SCCM. Why do we need BMC Discovery? And the answer is really the same, right? I mean, you could do the dependency mapping, I guess, with SCCM, but you just need a team of consultants to try to figure it out. Is that right?
And I am not an expert on SCCM, but I don't believe SCCM actually does relationship dependency mapping. Right. It kind of does what BMC Client Management does. I mean, if you got a BMC guy in the room and a Microsoft guy in the room, they would argue over who was prettier. But at the end of the day, they're kind of both doing the same thing. They're discovering they've got the ability to push patches, push applications out there, but again, it's more on the client side. To my knowledge, there are actually very few tools that compete with Discovery. HP's got one, IBM's got one, and BMC's got one, and that's about it.
Okay. All right. Let's see what else is out there. This question was asked: when you were doing remember when you drew a circle with your mouse and you were asking about what's out there from a remedies perspective, and a question was asked, will the ADDM component show up again as a suggested change? I've noticed that hosts get added to my applications that I do not want, and I have to remove them a number of times. Did you follow that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in the discovery view with that generic discovery it's going to do, it's going to always bring that in. But if you create your new map and give it your unique name, like in my case, I mapped out just Remedy 8.1 Prado 1, that's now not part of the common thing. That one shouldn't get affected by it adding those other components back in. That sounds like there might be some configuration or permissions issue there. So I would put in a call to BMC support on that, because that really shouldn't happen. Okay. That would make the tool almost impossible to use.
Right. And we can probably help a little bit more with that as well. If whoever asked that needs help. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Give us a call.
Okay. And next question up is, does an application created in Discovery present itself as a CI in CMDB? And if so, what CI type?
Well, it depends on whether you've done anything to your HMCMDB, but one of your typical CIs is an application. So that's typically the CI class, if you would, that it's going to use over in Atrium to show that as an application.
Okay, so if you set that up to begin with, then it would come in and it would populate the CMDB as that particular CI type. Then.
That's correct. I mean, your computer systems are going to come over as a CI, as a BMC _ computer systems. Your applications come over as a BMC _ applications. Your network devices, BMC _ however they're classifying your network devices. So they should map pretty clearly there. Now, if you've done something, put in a custom class over in Remedy, then you'd have to tweak that when you brought it over. But that's the whole point of having a reconciliation job in Remedy, is to take care of anything like that.
All right. Next question is what is a ballpark level of effort to get this set up? And I guess as BMC Discovery has gotten easier and easier, and with this automatic application mapping, I guess it doesn't require as much care and feeding anymore. Is that right?
It doesn't require as much as we used to have to quote when you had to do the collaborative application mapping and some of that. So, the caveat, right? How many appliances do you need in your environment? Do you need to have consolidated appliances? So without trying to wiggle out of an exact answer, there are broad ranges out there that you've got to have. I can tell you for a typical environment where you're going to have maybe up to, say, 5 appliances installed, 1,000 or so machines, and I'm talking about the Windows, Linux variety, not the mainframes and all of that, and do some collaborative mapping. You're talking somewhere to get it to production now, not just a proof of concept, to get it to production somewhere around the 3 to 4 week range, to get it out there, get it in the dev environment, train your people, the admin transfers, get it up and running. You could be up and running in a day or two in a proof of concept and discovering a lot of your devices, but that's not production ready. But I would say that 3 to 4 week range would be a good rule of thumb if you're not, again, a huge DoD customers where we've got a lot more things to consider and would have to do more of a deep dive on what the infrastructure looks like.
Okay, and I would suspect that even if you owned BMC Discovery, and maybe you didn't own a BMC CMDB, maybe you had a different product out there. I would suspect that somebody has done an integration between BMC Discovery and a non-BMC CMDB. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of any that are just out there to go plug, but I'm sure somebody has done it, because even before BMC bought this tool, they bought this from a company called Tideway, and they had been around for a decade themselves and were the top-rated discovery tool. So my guess is, just like BMC created the seamless integration into the Atrium CMDB, that implies that the integration, I mean, all it is a field mapping, right? I mean, that's all these things are doing. So I'm sure it could be done. I would point out again, though, if you buy BMC Discovery, you will get the Atrium CMDB, and you may find that it can vary, but you might find it actually easier to take it once it gets into Atrium and map it into some other technology, since, Atrium has things like the ability to federate. That means both ways of data. So the answer to your question is probably yes. I just can't tell you, does it work with, ABC's help desk system or CMDB? Nobody probably should be able to.
Okay. All right. Well, I've certainly every time you talk to BMC, they're always talking about BMC Discovery, and I think one of the things I've heard it said before is that it discovers about 40,000 different software versions out there, and the next closest competitor is only at around 20,000. So
that is correct.
Yeah. So this is the best product out there in the market space for this type of thing. So that's exciting.
And the great news about that, the price has come down significantly, even for the licensing on it. And I'm not a licensed guy. You can get with your RightStar sales rep or your BMC rep to do that. But the product continues to get better. The time to deploy it has become shorter, and the cost of the license has come down. I mean, that's a trifecta.
Okay. Gee, there are a couple of other questions here, so we're kind of come to the end here. But I think let's just go ahead and hit them here.
Okay.
First one is, what is the largest environment you have seen, number of discovered hosts and size of this scanning cluster?
I know BMC is talking to an account with 5 million servers. I don't know that it's quite closed yet, but I know they're quite close. Let's just say that, and again, without naming the specific one, if you think of the top 3 banks, at least one, if not more of them, use this to manage their environment. So that's a pretty large environment if you think of, Chase and Citi and Bank of America. If it's at least one, if not all of those, they leverage this type of technology. As I mentioned, certainly a lot of the federal government agencies do. So scalability does not appear to be any kind of issue with this. And, if you wanted some specific references and examples, that's probably something we could work with BMC to get you that once we understood a little bit more what it was you were looking for.
Okay. And we're working with intelligence agency, and of course they won't tell us how many they're discovering. So I don't know, but I suspect it's a pretty big number. Okay.
Yeah, I would suspect so.
Okay. I think that's it. I think the other one was just a comment here. So I think we're good. I appreciate everybody's time this afternoon. I know we tried to keep it within the time that we had allocated. Thank you, Roger. Great job. As you can see, the screen is displaying a contact RightStar, so we'd love to hear from you. If you would like to learn more about BMC Discovery, please either send us an email or give us a call, and we can set up a private demo if you'd like to learn a little bit more about it and even talk to you a little bit more about your unique requirements.